Welcome to the Sportsbook Review Live, Facebook Live Tailgate Party. I'm Joe Duffy of OffshoreInsiders.com, and we are going to give you a very accurate preview of today's championship games, Jacksonville and New England, as well as Philadelphia and Minnesota, including accurate injury information on Tom Brady.
Every gambler knows that the secret to surviving.
I don't wanna take advice from fools.
You always won every time you placed a bet.
Money, that's what I want.
Alrighty, folks. Again, very accurate information coming up. And of course, if you like this information, please, literally like us on Facebook, and that'll help us get more exposure. And if you're watching the rebroadcast, we do send it to YouTube and the Periscope and give us hearts there, etc. All right, let's take a look at the portfolio for today. We'll get straight to the chase. Jacksonville and New England. And of course, the big story here is Tom Brady's hand injury. And I know there was a note at Scamdecapper that got a lot of publicity because he did this generic tweet that he has two sources that tell him that Tom Brady's injury is much worse than reported. And of course, the media picked up on that. Look, I'll be the first to admit, I, like just about everybody in any industry, we always want a tweet to go viral. But in the case of OffshoreInsiders.com and Sportsbook Review, this has to be based on accurate information. You know, that tweet was simply a guess. There is no legitimacy to that. Look, the guy just basically prayed that he was right, and then he could be called a genius afterwards. Tom Brady's going against the best defense in the league, so even if he has a subpar game, the guy can say, look, my sources were correct. Well, here is the accurate information. We got it off of WEEI literally within the past 10 minutes or so. WEEI, for those of you who do not know, they are the sports station in Boston, far and away, and very good for accurate information. In fact, we're going to be monitoring Boston media all morning. Make sure you follow me at Offshore Insider on Twitter, and I will continue to post any and all legitimate, accurate updates. But as of now, Brady is probably going to wear a glove on his throwing hand. He will likely have the finger part cut out. Shouldn't be a huge factor. Originally, some credible reports were saying there were at least 4 stitches. I'm now being told that about a dozen stitches, so more stitches than originally reported. No ligament damage, so, the effect there will be some effect, but it is expected to be minimal. So, those people who gave this generic claim that it's much worse than reported. Of course, if they had accurate information, they would tell you what the legitimate injury was. They would say, look, he's got ligament damage. He's not going to play this weekend. So instead, they do this generic phony post, just hoping to get some publicity and, hoping that they were right. The guy was guessing, but no, that is the accurate information I gave you. And if there are any updates from legitimate sources, I will let you know in real time at Offshore Insider. There's no S at the end of that because of the character limitations. All right, now to the preview beyond Tom Brady. The Patriots have a league best 12-5 against the spread margin record, but only plus 1.9 margin of cover. And again, as we said, some of you know that as the so-called sweat barometer. That means that the Patriots have been covering, but not by huge margins. Conversely, the Jaguars have the best against the spread margin, or some of you know it as a sweat barometer. And again, feel free, anybody's watching, feel free to comment or question. Of course, I'm going to cover every single game, so the questions, pretty good chance the questions are going to be answered here. But, let me know where you're watching from. That's always kind of fun, especially if you're watching outside the United States. Feel free to put that in the comment section. Again, the software that I'm using to do these broadcasts and, to do the fancy intro and, all the graphics here. It's still, they update it every now and then, but I believe I should have no problem seeing the comments, but I'll just, as a backup, do it on Facebook myself. And let's see, let me give myself a like, if I can find this broadcast on Facebook. There we go. I see me and gave myself a like. So why don't you join me in giving me a like? And there you go. I see scratching my head. I do have some itching issues. We'll talk about that at another time. New England is going over 6-3 at home. The Jaguars are the number 4 over team by margin at plus 3.8, but they've only gone over at a 9-9 rate. So again, that's the big difference between against the spread margin or, also over under, how much a team does go over or under by. We definitely think the margin is much more important than a mere record. Now, here's where the matchup could be interesting. Patriots get 7.4 passing yards per attempt to teams normally getting 6.7, but the Jaguars do hold teams to 0.9 yards per pass below their normal average. The Jaguars, though, surprisingly allow 4.3 yards per carry to teams normally allowing 4.0. So I would not be surprised at all to see that the Patriots will try to establish the run early to really open up the passing game. Also, of course, nobody ever knows what Bill Belichick is thinking, but I can see him playing a little bit of possum early, being conservative, maybe give Jacksonville a false sense of security that Brady's hand is actually hurt worse than expected. So my free pick, I would bet, and again, I'm not big in the betting, quarters and halftime stuff, but I'll give you a free pick. I do think the first quarter would be under, and make sure you bet it at any one of those approved sports books at sbrodds.com. But I do see, New England, for both legitimate reasons and for, maybe playing possum reasons, might get a little conservative early, and then I expect them to open it up late. And the truth is, the first quarter goes under. The second quarter, I would lean towards the over, but especially if it's a low-scoring game at halftime, I would definitely bet this second half over. So the Jaguars are surprisingly vulnerable to the run. Now, they're allowing, as I said, 4.7 yards per rush to teams that normally get just 4.1, 5.9 yards per play to 5.5, the Patriots, that is. So the Patriots are very vulnerable. And with Leonard Fournette, look for Jacksonville to also pound the ball. Both of these teams could have success running the ball. The strength versus weakness, if you're looking for matchups, both teams running the ball on offense is their best matchups. The Jaguars, of course, very physical defensive backs of Jalen Ramsey and A.J. Boye, and the great pass rush means New England, again, will they run the ball a little bit more than normal? I think one of the misconceptions about Bill Belichick, a lot of people say he's an expert on exploiting mismatches. Of course, that's true, but my observation and years of watching Belichick, he goes from the John Wooden school. I remember one of the great interviews, Bob Costas interviewed John Wooden years ago. And if those of you are saying, who the heck is John Wooden? Wow, you're very young. But Wooden always said that he didn't worry so much about a team's weakness. He would always play to his own team's strengths. And contrary to what I think is a perception of Belichick, Belichick does the same thing. I don't think his game plan is really adjusted as much to the other team's weaknesses as it is. He likes to go with his strength. And I do think that Brady will throw the ball a lot, especially as the game goes on. But I do think that early might get a little conservative. Vegas and offshore have about 60% of the bets were on the Patriots, but surprisingly a little bit more outlaw line ratio on Jacksonville. Going against playoff teams that scored 40 or more points in a playoff game is 17-4 against the spread. That would say to fade the Pats. And similar to what we were saying above, we like to use the advanced metrics, and it's really, very much consistent with the metrics we use when we like to use a team's rushing and passing stuff relative to what a team normally allows. Football Outsiders has some metrics they use. They say New England's offensive line is the third best in the league against the run, or running the ball, I should say. Jacksonville, only the 28th best defensive line against the run, according to the metrics that Football Outsiders use. So again, the free pick on that will be on the under. And by the way, at offshoreinsiders.com, having a historic year. In fact, our exact record is good. Is it like 218 and go down, I think it's 218, 134, something like that. But we do have our accurate record on offshoreinsiders.com since August the 27th of preseason. We've got wise guy plays on both sides and the top total for today, plus NBA at offshoreinsiders.com. Now let's check Minnesota at Philadelphia. Of course, the big story here, we're all aware. Rare case of a team actually unprecedented. We got a road favorite in this game in the conference championship games, and I'm just, excuse me as I check this. Doesn't look like have any unanswered questions to get to. Just wanted to double check it with our, checking it out live as opposed to our software. And it looks like I have my tables too close to each other. Every time I play with my one computer, I get the shaky screen. But anyway, both teams are 11-6 against the spread, Minnesota and Philadelphia. The Eagles have the second best against the spread margin at plus 6.1. Vikings, though, are fourth at plus 4.5. Of course, not surprising this time of the year. Vikings are completing 67.4% of the passes. The defense is allowing just 63.1. And they get 7.2 passing yards attempted. Teams normally give 6.7. So what this says is, again, statistically, Case Keenum is not getting as much credit as he deserves. Case Keenum is a much better quarterback. And I think, because of reputation, Minnesota's offense, in particular Keenum, remains underrated. You've already heard me say many times, I think Thielen's a very underrated wide receiver. So the Vikings passing game is better than people think. The Eagles, though, hold teams to 0.3 yards per rush and 0.6 yards per pass and 0.3 yards per play, below their normal average. Philadelphia has allowed only 26 points in their last 3 games compared to Vikings 24 in their last game. And, of course, as we know, that was against Drew Brees, a great all-time quarterback, a heck of a playoff quarterback. So, keep that into perspective. But, the hotter defense without question is Philadelphia. I've already been asked, have the great pleasure. I don't even remember where it was. I think it may have been on the For the Win, the Vikings for the Win podcast. I was asked, could the Vikings have a little bit of a letdown because of the way last week ended? No. I don't think that happens in the playoffs. I think that's a legitimate thing during the regular season. Less so in football, quite frankly, than other sports. I don't expect an emotional letdown whatsoever because of the crazy finish to that. And I've been watching football a long time. I mean, literally since, I was like 3 or 4. I mean, I was obsessed with watching sports at an earliest age, and you can see by looking at me, that was a while ago, but that was one of the crazy, maybe not the single craziest, finish. Of course, the Alabama-Auburn game, that kick 6, was crazy, and, even the regular season, the Hail Mary and the Dumb Food. I mean, there have been some crazy finishes. I guess the band, the California Stanford band play has to be the single craziest finishes, but this one was up there, especially the magnitude. But no, I do not expect an emotional letdown. Angi and Blount, they're great guys to get 3-4 yards at a time, but do they match up well against the Vikings defense that already, is so good at slowing teams down? Almost think if you want to beat the Vikings, it's good to have some of those breakaway threats, a home run hitter. And the Eagles with Nick Foles as a backup quarterback, and with, as much as I like these physical running backs that get you 3-4 yards at a time, I think that's a tough matchup. I don't think the Vikings are a team that you can nickel and dime to death. Now, that would be good, if the Eagles have a lead in the fourth quarter with that 1-2 running punch. But I really think against the Vikings, you could use a home run threat, which is what New Orleans had in almost beating them last week. We know how that game turned out. But, I think New Orleans matches up a little bit well because of that. Philly, they're going to expect it to run run away from Everson Griffin and Linval Joseph behind, Brandon Book and Lane Joseph. A lot of people who watch the game films and that we monitor think that Philadelphia will really miss Jason Peters this week, blocking Everson Griffin. Vitae should be a mismatch. That's why we expect Philadelphia to run away from him. The Eagles' best bet, Alshon Jeffrey with a little bit of a height advantage over Xavier Rhodes. So, again, those of you, and you're probably going to ask about props, and I apologize if because of the, the software, which is still in beta, if I'm missing any comments. I don't think I am. But, I've often asked, especially in big games, about props. I got to admit, I don't even know what the over-under is for Jeffrey, but I do think more so in yards. Alshon Jeffrey will probably go over, maybe in catches, but I do think that's where Philly has a nice match. Nelson Aguilar has really not gelled with Foles, but a good chance for him to get a breakout game. Another one, Kyle Rudolph. Consider him maybe both receptions and catches over the total. Philadelphia does not match up well with big athletic tight ends. Now, the Vikings have the third best defense in NFL history. In NFL history, stopping third down. Of course, going up against a guy that, He's literally a backup quarterback. Is he kind of like Case Keenum, though? One of these guys that, is good enough to be a starter on a lot of teams. And, of course, Keenum's breaking out. And Nick Foles, most of his best games in his career have been with each of his times he's been with Philadelphia. Those who are into this, Ed Hockley, he's the head ref here. He's one of the best underdog refs in the NFL at 90-66 against the spread, but the road team is 82-72. So, obviously underdog, but in this case you have a home underdog. Nice little feature here. I did subscribe to Chad Millman's website, and I kind of like this feature that he has where they have a mathematical thing where they take the amount of money bet percentage-wise, and then they subtract the percentage of actual bettors, and they come up with what the sharp money is based on that mathematical formula. As far as the spread is concerned, based on that, there's really no huge edges, a small edge to Philadelphia and a small edge to New England based on those metrics. But when it comes to the total, they say the sharp money is on New England by is on New England under the New England-Jacksonville game under a pretty strong sharp move according to those metrics as I just explained. And the Minnesota-Philadelphia over is a pretty decent sharp play according to those metrics, measuring the amount of money versus the percentage of money. The theory being the big bets are from the sharps, the small bets from, the square players. So those would be the sharp plays using those metrics. And what the hell? Well, while you're here, we will go the sharp moves in the NBA based on those metrics. Brooklyn and then the New York Knicks, neither by totally overwhelming. The Detroit under and the San Antonio under, according to those metrics, would be sharp moves. And we'll go to college basketball. Not really enough money on the totals yet, but according to those metrics, Utah in college basketball, Valparaiso, Canisius, they would be the sharp moves using those metrics. And we do take that into account. We use that as corroborating data in the Joe Duffy's Picks handicapping at offshoreinsiders.com. It's not one of our top indicators, but I do like that feature. That's why I subscribe to it as, as corroborating data. So it is definitely used in our handicapping. All right. Well, obviously, next week, we won't have a Facebook Live. I will in 2 weeks on Super Bowl Sunday. We will take a look at some props. We'll have very accurate information. Again, if you're not already following me on Twitter, I will continue to monitor the credible sources to see if there are any updates from what we said about Tom Brady. If you did not hear our Tom Brady update, and, earlier, as we said, make sure we got more details, but he will be wearing stitches. He will be wearing stitches, but does not look to be as serious as an injury as, some frauds are reporting, and that he will play and that he should have a minimal effect on that. But if you follow me at Offshore Insider on Twitter, we will update up until game time if a big change happens. And that's really on both games, any sharp information. So make sure you follow me. And we will talk to you on Super Bowl Sunday. And follow me on Twitter, for my own YouTube channel. I do podcasts and free picks and all this other stuff. So follow me at Offshore Insider on Twitter.